Hi, and welcome to Deep Dive with Jamie Stein, where we take a deep dive look at all things reality TV, pop culture, and the world at large. I'm an intuitive and an empath, which means I pick up on the thoughts, feelings, and energy percolating in other people and the world around me. I believe there is meaning waiting to be found at every turn if you're willing to see it. So join me as we dismantle everything from trash TV to high spiritual concepts and learn more about ourselves, each other, and how we're all connected. Hey everyone, and welcome back to this quick and dirty episode of Deep Dive with Jamie Stein. This isn't necessarily an officially planned episode. I guess you could say I'm maybe in a little bit of a phase of exploration and experimentation and redefining my podcast identity. And I just kind of want to play around with different things. And on that note, I recently found out that very, very old trusted friend of the podcast, Piper Sampler, is in fact watching the season of Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She'd previously weaned herself off these shows for a minute, so she wasn't around to grace us with her perspective and her wisdom, but I did hear tell that she has been sucked back into the season of Beverly Hills. And there's been so much this season that I've been interested in unpacking, definitely including Dorit and just where she's at in her journey. So I thought, why not just see if Piper was available for, like I said, a quick, dirty, impromptu episode. We've kind of given ourselves 45 minutes just to kind of shoot the shit a little bit about Dorit and see where it takes us. No big plan. Haven't done any big drop-ins beforehand. Just kind of showing up to the mic and letting it be an organic, impromptu conversation with my old friend, Piper. So having said that, why don't we jump in? All right, Piper. So yeah, I'm just kind of curious. I know you've been dipping your toe back into Beverly Hills some, and there's actually a lot that I'm drawn to, but I've definitely found myself drawn to Dorit in the way that she's showing up this season, which feels like it's kind of deepening and evolving as the season goes on. But I'm just so curious what your experience of her has been as of late.
Yeah, I'm dying to know what you're noting, but it's clear that she is going through something transitional. In that transition, it's almost like there's some reconciliation happening internally for her, where she's looking at her relationships from a lens that says, I've been putting up with so much all this time and no more. I am not doing it anymore. And it's kind of interesting to kind of like be on the ride with her, because her perception feels a little off to me in terms of maybe what her idea of what she's been putting up with, I kind of feel participating in. And there's a lot of blame for the other and not a lot of responsibility being taken for her part in it. And I think that's kind of showing up in the way that she's trying to change something. Instead, like if it were me, I might say something like, wow, I've really seen the way that I've shown up in these relationships. And I really would love to have a conversation with what we can do differently, because it's not working for me anymore. But instead, it's like, no more. And I feel like people are kind of blindsided, and then the people that are being blindsided also have a little something going on too. So I don't think it's going very well for her, is the way I see it.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. It's like there is this level of rage that's been buried beneath the surface, I think connected to the ways that she's been participating in these relationships, perhaps betraying boundaries within herself, like whatever compromises she's been making to maintain the equilibrium in these relationships or to maintain a certain type of connection. And to your point, I think the marriage ending, we could say, I mean, I guess we don't still know yet whether they're actually going to get divorced, but theoretically ending, this bump in the road with PK, it's like becoming this vehicle or this trigger for the part of her, like you're saying, that's suddenly waking up and saying, wait a second, I've made all these compromises for these relationships. And now, I mean, I think in terms of the marriage with PK, I'm not even getting back in return what I bargained for. It's kind of like, in my mind, I'm sort of holding the short end of the stick. Like I made all these compromises and what for? And now he's like out the door and I'm fucking pissed. And there's this part of her that's saying no more. But to your point, it's like in her place of rage, there really is what I experience, this entitlement. That's how I keep feeling it. It's this level of entitlement where she can only see one side of things and it's her side. And then she's putting these demands on other people that I don't really think she's also putting on herself, you know? So I think the situation with Sutton is a perfect example. And it's so interesting because once again, I find myself on the complete opposite of, well, I don't know what the main consensus is at this point. I just know for a long time, people have really loved Sutton. I personally, as a viewer, found Sutton very difficult on a personality level. And yet this season, it seems like a lot of people are very down on Sutton and kind of tired of her antics and down on the way that, you know, they really are down on her going for the jugular with the wallet comment, you know, my wallet's bigger than yours. Whereas when Dorit took that jab about the vodka, and it wasn't just the jab about the vodka. It was, you know, Sutton coming into that party, being left waiting, the passive aggressive comments about the purse, then the vodka jab. And, you know, I just felt like, yeah, Dorit went for the jugular and she, as the kids say, she fucked around and found out. Sutton stabbed her back. I'm not saying Sutton handled it in the most mature fashion, but I got where Sutton was coming from. And I kind of got a thrill out of seeing someone really push back against Dorit. Because Dorit does tend to, she likes to get away with things, you know, and that's part of what I'm really drawn to with her is her passive aggressiveness. Because even going back to her first season, if you remember her taking that little passive aggressive dig with Erica, where Erica had unintentionally flashed PK when she wasn't wearing underwear. And so then Dorit went out and got her a gag gift of panties. And it was passive aggressive. It was cruel. It was mean. There's this passive aggressive through line to Dorit. So when I see her looking at Sutton and basically saying, you took this jab about the wallet. Oh no, you called me a bitch. That's sort of where all this started, right? So Dorit takes the jab about the drinking. Then Sutton says, you're such a bitch. And Dorit's like, well, I never, you know, just shocked. And then proceeds to go on to talk.
I was only kidding.
Right, exactly. Takes zero responsibility for her negative intention, zero responsibility for part in it, and then literally says, Sutton takes these jabs and then acts like a victim when people respond. And I'm just kind of sitting there like, Dorit, you are literally describing your own behavior. So there's this weird blind spot with her where, like I said, there's an entitlement, there's an entitled rage. And then there's a blind spot where the entitled rage demands things of other people that she won't adhere to herself. And it's like toxic. There's something there that feels really, I mean, it really is, because in that blind spot, she can just take and take and take and take and take and take and take. It's all about me and what I can get. I don't give a fuck about what part I'm playing in this. I don't care about what you need. I'm the one who's wronged. I'm the one who wants something. And if you don't give it to me, I'm going to fucking keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going and keep going.
Well, and that's kind of, if we go back to kind of when she really, for me, started to sort of presence herself as one who doesn't stop talking, for instance, right? In a conversation, I'm going to keep going and keep going and keep going. And I don't take in anybody else. And I think she even, I don't know when it was, I remember hearing her say something about the right and wrong of things or the winning of a conversation, whether it be with PK or maybe Kyle or something. I don't remember when it came in, but I remember thinking to myself, oh, yeah, Dorit's sort of position is until she has been given the headline that says, Dorit, you are right. There is no stopping. I will never stop until I actually hear those words. And even if I hear those words and it feels like you're, in some way just saying them so that I'll shut up, I will not stop. And so I hear what you're saying about the entitlement or the taking of things. And I was thinking about, like, what is it in her that takes and takes and takes? And there's a way that she has always wanted to curate an image of herself as a mother, as a wife, as a friend. And when the reflection comes back at her that her curation is not actually being reflected, it kind of sends her off. I'm thinking about the way that she used to show up. So I don't know if she still does this, but shows up so late for things because, like, it doesn't matter what your time is. I have things to do,
Mm-hmm.
which is create an image and put myself all together. And it was worth the wait, right? Like, I'm so fabulous. So there's something about what you're saying in terms of, that entitled, I don't really feel the impact that I'm having on other people, so much so that I'm denying the impact that I seem to be having and denying it in a way that gaslights you into, there's something wrong with you for thinking this isn't just a joke, or I didn't mean something by that. Or in the case of even Garcelle back in the day, like that or I don't know if it was Garcelle, it was somebody was trying to help her see a way that she was in relationship with her identity and others' identity, kind of from a racist perspective. And it was just, couldn't see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you're bringing up the lateness because I've been thinking so much about her punctuality or lack thereof. To me, it just feels like such a huge, glowing micro example of her passive aggressiveness. I mean, full disclosure, people who chronically run late and especially really late, that is one of my biggest pet peeves. I just feel like I do. I feel that there's something so passive aggressive about it and so just deeply disrespectful of other people's time, And so I'll just say this. One of the not one of the few things, but one of the things that I do really respect about Bethany Frankel is no matter how successful she got, she was always punctual and she was always on time. And that was one of those, sometimes you spot little things in Housewives where you're like, oh, that's my kindred spirit. And I'm like, Bethany's always on time. I respect that about her. But yes, I've always clocked Dorit's lateness. And I actually at one point was going to do a little video dropping in to her lateness and also kind of exploring what would it mean for her to actually be on time. It was a minute ago, so I don't remember like the specifics, but it really was this. Well, I can just drop in a little right now.
Drop in now. Yeah.
I mean, so as far as the lateness goes, I just immediately hear this voice. It's like, yeah, I want what I want when I want it. Yeah, I'm entitled to this. It's going to be on my terms. It really feels connected to power. Like, this is where I get, it's not actually embodied, but like the unconscious is saying, this is where I get like an embodied sense of my power. This is what, I'm playing to win here. This is how I experience some, I guess, otherwise disowned sense of my power and my agency. Like, I'm playing the game here. I'm playing to win, like you're saying, and I feel powerful here. And then when I drop into her, like the idea of, well, what if we hypothesize Dorit actually showing up on time? I mean, it's like there's just a bracing in my heart. It's like, no. But let me stay with this for a second. It's just, it feels like self-betrayal. Like, I'm not playing on your terms. This is where I get to have my say. This is where I get to have my win. And it's this feeling like if I play by your rules, I'm sacrificing something so deep inside myself. So if I just track this feeling and kind of hypothesize about history, or like what, the historical pattern may have felt like, it's like some feeling in her, like in her youth, of I'm robbed of my agency. I'm robbed of my sense of personal power. I'm robbed of my right, to have a direct relationship to my point of view, my power, and what I have to say. Some part of me is outraged about that. So I'm going to get my say in these little fucking ways. I mean, it kind of connects back to what you were saying up top about just this experience of, I forget exactly how you languaged it, but like, no more. Like, I've got something to say about this and I'm fucking saying it. And in the place where it feels like there wasn't actually room for her to say the real thing, which was, listen to me, I've got something to say. I don't like what's going on here. I don't like how I'm being shut down. I don't like how my power is being shut down. Instead, I am so powerful. My power is still going to get out there, but it's going to get out in these little leaky ways. And no fucking way am I giving that up. This is like you can't see me at home. I'm making a fist. This is like my stronghold. This is how I hold on to some sense of my powerful agency. And, the last thing I'll say connected to this as I feel into it is, I mean, Dorit clearly has a lot of powerful energy in her, a lot of powerful life force.
I agree with all that. And I'm curious about your perspective around her like specialness, because for some reason, for me, when I was listening to you, I was kind of feeling also the way she arrives in her lateness, which is, kind of like the catwalk, coming in as the designated guest, right? Even in her own home where she's having people show up, at a party, she's not greeting them, but she kind of comes down as if she is the guest of the party when she's hosting it. So there's that. But then in every other context, it's like, it's about her outfit. It's about when she comes in, I hear, look at me, like, I'm worth the wait. And it's something about like a worth thing for me when I feel it. And the worthiness equates to, I have to be special.
I definitely have some thoughts about that. Did you have your own sense of where that comes from, or?
No, I was just curious, even if like, that's just my hit on it, that you didn't kind of call, you were referencing the power. And I was also feeling this, like, I'm thinking back with Kyle, how triggered she got when somehow their friendship was, remember when Lisa Vanderpump and, back in the day, like that little triangle, who was more special to Lisa or to Kyle? Like, there's something in being the most of something, even when she was hosting parties or throwing parties, there just felt like this such a competitive edge in her. And so I agree with the power piece, but I was interested in whether or not you also felt it, like the flavor of the need to be special.
Yeah, well, what comes to me, I don't know what you remember of what, what we previously explored, because I know sometimes it's in the moment and then you lose it. But we did an episode actually about Dorit and Garcelle. And part of what came through so strongly, and it's actually been confirmed in little ways on the show since then, was this possible notion or pattern of Dorit not being fully taken seriously, let's say in her family system. And this idea of like, I mean, I'm experiencing it again. This came through in the episode and I'm feeling it again, like kind of like shoving her out of the room. Like, the adults are talking now, Dorit. We don't want to hear it. There, Dorit. Like, stop your nonsense. Some sort of, dynamic where basically she's not taken seriously. Her voice isn't welcome. There's kind of like the adult side of the room, and then there's the Dorit side of the room, which that right then and there, right, that would speak to a possible shutdown of her powerful voice, her point of view. But there's also just such like a I always feel a quality of, just like I said, they're there, Dorit. Like, they're there. Like, not like we're shutting you out angrily, almost like we're not even taking you seriously. And when I kind of feel the flavor of that, I can feel connected to it, this idea of like, oh, you're just our precious little girl. You're just our precious little princess. Oh, you're pretty. Let's dress you up. And that there was maybe mileage in that for her as well. Because obviously, if that's where she gets her sense of value, well, then it's like, okay, this is where I get my value. I'm the pretty little princess, right? I'm the doll who's walking down the runway. People, sort of talk about me in this way. But then there's a push pull there too, right? Because on the one hand, I resent being made the little China doll who no one takes seriously and is like, they're there to read. But then on the other side of it, this is also where I get my currency. So part of it on some level feels good. If I'm getting attention and feedback for this, and this is how the adults around me are going to reflect something back to me, part of me this is my power in a way. My power can flow through this persona. And I'm saying this too because I feel like it connects in some ways to what we're hearing about a relationship with PK, where, I want to be clear, I don't think we're getting anything close to the real story of what's going on with them. And I have such a distinct sense from the beginning of the season of, I think their marital troubles are real for sure. I definitely think they're giving us a version of what's going on. It's kind of like a little bit of smoke and mirrors. And I think there's other stuff going on that we don't know about. But regardless, what we have heard about on the show is this notion of, you aren't the same woman that I married. I miss, kind of like, it always sounds like he's saying like the trophy wife, the social butterfly, the woman who looked good on my arm. And I feel like what Dorit is saying is, I'm settling into something deeper and realer. And in some ways, the home invasion almost was a facilitation of that. Like, it connected her more deeply to a sense of trauma, to emotions. And PK is kind of saying, I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for the little China doll. So, in the place where I think we're always living out the patterns of our most early wounds, there could be evidence there that, yeah, Dorit was kind of locked out of the adult conversations, wasn't taken seriously. Maybe there was real kind of fear and vulnerability there because there's stuff going on that she's not being included in. And yeah, maybe things feel unsafe, but it's like, there, Dorit, we don't take you seriously. Shut up and look pretty. Like I said, from that, there's both a sense of deep rage and resentment, but also power and currency. And so now we see her kind of wielding both those things. Like, I'm going to be the little model with the designer clothes that no one on the show takes seriously. If people kind of make a joke out of me, oh, Dorit talks so much, ha, ha, ha. But within that, I'm wielding it as power. I'm running late. I'm going to keep talking. I'm going to make you answer for, I'm never going to fucking let go. You're going to pay the price.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like that's kind of where the aggression stems from. And the passivity in it is to sort of maintain the image, right? That she is the pretty thing. I think there's a knowing about that, but there's also the deep rage that comes up when she's not seen as also smart and with a voice and perceptive. Because the other thing I was kind of thinking about in terms of her and this conflict with Sutton, it's clear that PK in their marriage, there's addiction there. And she continues to be that voice that is sort of picking out where there are issues around drinking and poking at it in a way, not letting it go. But I'm also aware that something was happening in her marriage that I would imagine fed into part of the conflicts that were going on, whether PK was hiding something, my felt sense is that she, like you said, in that they're there, I'm going to handle all these other things. And I think it really, I was kind of wondering about that home invasion too. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was such a traumatic event. And then I think, was it last season that she was working through all that or the season before? I don't even know.
Yeah, it was a few seasons ago now, I think.
Yeah. Just imagine that level of sort of invasion lack of safety, how vocal she was throughout that season of what she was doing to get through that. I would imagine in that process, she sort of gained some legs there, like, okay, I did get through this. I was the one that was home. PK didn't want to talk about any of it, and she was trying to process it. And I would imagine around that time, it's like she was really saying, "Hey, dude, this is this is life that's happening here, and you're acting like you can't handle something." So the power piece comes in around that time, like where she actually started seeing herself maybe as empowered more, sort of a little more in something that is, I'm able to get through something in a way that PK can't. And maybe seeing someone like, the way I've always seen Sutton, there's clearly a lot of trauma in there that she hadn't worked all the way through. And if she's using alcohol as a way to sort of manage what's going on and she becomes two different people, it probably drives Dorit crazy.
Yeah, you're bringing in something that I think is really interesting. And I'm glad you are, because it feels actually like a huge piece of this puzzle. And it's not something that I really consciously clocked before now, because again, Dorit does so often present as a joke and she becomes the butt of the joke. But the reality is it's true. She does often really clock things that are true. And I actually think that's a huge part of why, I know you're not really tapped into viewer response, but people were really cheerleading her at the beginning of the season when she was taking on Kyle. And to be honest, even I talked about this in a previous episode. I mean, I thought she was bringing a level of heat and rage to Kyle that didn't feel proportionate to the situation. But I will say, even I did get a certain thrill out of just seeing her, again, especially someone who can be as shut down as her, connect to something emotionally real, directly connect to that heat and that fire. And she really was holding Kyle's feet to the fire and really naming some things in a way where Kyle doesn't usually get held to the fire like that. And so I'm saying all of this because you're right. Well, I don't know if you were intentionally saying this, but what I'm hearing is she does have an actual ability to see things and to spot things. And the reason I'm saying this is it brings, and then when you were talking about PK's drinking, again, we don't know much about her family of origin or her history. But, I made brief mention of this possible notion of like she's being shut out of the rooms where the adults are talking. But it was this idea of like real shit might be going on, and let's just like be hypothetical. If like, let's say patterns repeating itself, maybe there's addiction in the family. Like, there could have been things going on in the family. And if Dorit is actually a young girl with a lot of life force, as we've established, the capacity to see things, and maybe she's the one sitting there saying, guys, I'm seeing shit. I want to call it out. I want to clock it. And then she's being met with, there, Dorit. Just shut up and look pretty. Put your dress on. We don't want it. Like the adults are talking, Dorit. We don't want to hear what you have to say. Or maybe there's a way that it was coming out where, she couldn't own it like in the most articulate way, but there was like a wisdom that wanted to come through and no one would listen. And to me, it kind of makes even more sense of what we're putting together here of this possible strong, powerful spirit who can see things, wanted to say something, got not just shut down, but dismissed and told, we don't want to hear it. You're just here to look pretty. And so then she's just sort of sitting here looking pretty. And then, like I said, like it's like a push pull. There's currency in it and there's rage around it. And I think the last thing I'll say, and I think this actually came through when we were exploring her last time. Again, I'm always interested in pattern and what the present might be revealing about the past. And it wasn't lost on me that there was this horrifying event with the break-in that was chaotic and life-threatening and brought her into this deeper level of trauma. And it really did make me wonder, is there any kind of historical relationship to a feeling of lack of safety? Like what I was saying before of like, this might feel unsafe that I can't speak up and talk about what's going on. And that's the one thing I briefly mentioned this earlier, but she mentioned really briefly, actually in her post-invasion recovery, she and PK were actually talking about her ability to compartmentalize and how they've always viewed that as a strength. PK was kind of like talking her up for that. But she did relay a memory. It had something to do with her father kind of teaching her how to compartmentalize fear in the face of chaos. And I remember thinking, oh, that's really interesting based on what Piper and I had already explored.
Yeah. And maybe this is part of what she's unraveling right now is the strategy that, clearly was working on so many levels for a long time. It allowed her, to be where she was before all this stuff went down. And then maybe when things really got interrupted there, the status quo where her image and the perception that they had it all together was there. I feel like wasn't there some sort of speculation that like there was some financial stuff going on with PK too?
Well, I don't want to interrupt your thought, but I wanted to bring this in as like a final piece because I think her relationship to money is really interesting in all of this. And I'm so curious about your take on that because there is such a grifter aspect, well, certainly to him, but also to her. And I want to talk about that.
Yes, exactly. Because where it takes me and where I was headed with this particular part was it was so interesting to me, this conflict with her and Sutton, because Sutton's jab, went to her pocketbook. But I think my point I was trying to like move towards was what you were talking about in terms of Dorit's ability to kind of see something above or below the surface of things, and Sutton's apologies that comes in after these really awful, horrific things that she says. It's like Dorit is also kind of like, I'm not going to pretend anymore, and I'm not going to compartmentalize this thing and act as if I'm accepting your apology anymore because it doesn't mean anything to me. There's something honest about her inability to take in this apology because I don't think she actually believes it. And I think before she didn't either, but she pretended in some way. And then I was really sitting back at this last, I think it was maybe the end of the season, the last little one that I watched just last night. Everybody's like, Dorit, she's trying to apologize. Bose was even like saying, can you take that in? And Dorit's like, basically too little too late. And it's just going to come back around again. So let's not pretend here anymore. So that's kind of a little piece of what I see with Dorit also is coming. It's not looking good. It's not going well for her because the way she's holding, but she is seeing something with Kyle, with Sutton.
Yeah. And it's almost like she's seeing something. And then the way she undercuts herself, she wants something answered for, right? Like on a surface level in these present day contemporary friendships, relationships on the show. And what it feels like to me, though, is there's this little girl who still wants something answered for historically in the past. And it just feels like the two threads are getting crisscrossed. And I hear what you're saying. There's the piece, right, where she's seeing something of like, oh, you're full of shit. The truth teller in me isn't going to accept that. But also, like on the flip side of it, when someone, let's just say, is genuinely apologizing, or the idea that she doesn't run late anymore, or the idea that she has to answer for her part in a situation such as making a jab about the vodka. It's like, I think what pulls back from all of that is the historical place, the little girl who's like, I still want something answered for in terms of the...
You know what that is?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I feel like what we're hypothetically exploring in terms of history, in terms of the original place where I got shut down, in terms of the original place where I learned I had to pretend to be a little China doll in my relationships, or in order to get the love. It's just, I think there's something historical in her. I mean, I have to imagine that isn't even conscious in her yet, like that she might not even be conscious of this wound. And in the place where she's not conscious and she hasn't done work around it, it's like there's something in her that's like, I want this answered for. And so then she hangs on to these little present day places that reflect that pattern. And then she keeps herself locked in these cycles because she is making these passive aggressive power plays. She won't let things go. She does have huge double standards. And then people, once again, kind of act out towards her, and then that inflames the sense of misunderstanding once again. So, I think one of the main takeaways I've really gotten from this season, and maybe this is stating the obvious, but I want to just name it out loud from a really felt place, is just the sheer level of rage. She just feels so powerfully angry. And it feels like if she could make conscious, intentional contact with that, not from a place of, taking things out on the people in her life, in a disproportionate way, but like getting to the root of the historical anger and then letting herself finally have it in a way that it sounds like she wasn't allowed to as a girl or as a young woman. The words I'm hearing is she could set the world on fire because she is powerful. It feels like she was made to be hot, like she feels hot, like she's got heat in her.
Mm-hmm.
And it just feels like it's coming out like a flamethrower right now because she's been keeping it at a pilot light. And now it's coming out like a flamethrower, and it's coming out towards like Kyle Richards and Sutton, and like just people where, again, it's not that she doesn't have legitimate issues with them, but it's kind of like what you're saying. There's a way she could have gone about this, which is, let's hash it out. I'm seeing some things. I want to take responsibility for some things. And instead, she's just like spraying the flamethrower everywhere.
Yeah, because I don't hear her identifying, again, back to the top of the call, like any part that she plays in any of it. Like she's not saying, hey, I've learned that compartmentalizing things and stuffing what I really have to say or being quiet when I really want to call something out has played a part in the way that these relationships have left me in a position where I feel taken advantage of, where I feel like I'm not being seen or valued. And maybe what you're saying, at least from a historical pattern, is something about how she perceives others seeing her value, like what does she have to do to feel her place in a relationship? And maybe she's coming to terms with, in terms of what needs to be answered for, I wasn't seen in all of my power at some point. And then I learned, in order to hold on to that power, to hide it in a certain way. And then she kind of didn't get seen, really, because it's like, how power leaks out and then it's not really seen as powerful. It's just seen as messy. And that's kind of the image that I have in the moment. Like when you ask, like, what is it that isn't being answered for here in her? Because for some reason, when I think about the scenes that I recall anyway with her parents, it's almost, because I haven't seen them for so long, I don't remember having a felt sense that, she was sort of poo-pooed. It's almost like there's, she's, at least in the image that they portray, like it's a good relationship today, like.
Yeah. I
could be wrong, but.
No. It does seem that way. And, I also want to say relationships do change, people change, and dynamics change, especially, even just by virtue perhaps of Dorit getting famous, could change dynamics, and also, as I don't need to tell you this, but, also things can be covert, messages can be silent. So it's not always the explicitly said message, right? But, as you were talking, it's just the archetypal image I get around Dorit is that she, in her essence, in her soul, is kind of like this flamethrower. Like she's on fire. There's heat, what's that called? Like a pyrotechnic, someone who's like throwing the fire batons. And like she has that fire breathing spirit. And almost like the world came in and was like, no. Put this little dress on. Put your hair in braids. We're going to like become a Joan Benet Ramsey. And that kind of split then happened. That's just kind of like the image I got. And just, again, the rage that must be there again, the specialness, the currency, but the rage. And then, okay, how am I going to find ways to wield my power in the Joan Benet Ramsey outfit? And I feel like that's kind of what she's been doing.
Well, yeah. And look at her fashion line, like I remember when she was kind of doing the whole swimsuit, thing, that fire sort of came into this business. She was kind of taking over and doing well. And PK was like, hey, you're a mom. Like, you need to show up. And you're taking away from the housewife.
And also one of the other times where I actually found her the most likable, and it's one of the things that Kyle's pissed about, of course, was when she kind of came in when Kyle was a disaster with her own, I don't know what it was, like a caftan line. Kyle had some fashion line in New York, and Dorit came in and just basically was like, what the fuck are you doing? This is a mess. And I remember thinking, oh, I like this part of Dorit. I like the take charge, no bullshit, coming in. She actually seemed like she knew something. I was like, oh, this is powerful. So yeah, it's that fire breather in her. And then, kind of like what you're saying, from a place of pattern, even looking at the conflict, Kyle's pissed about it. It's like Dorit spoke up. She shared her wisdom. She shared her power. And now here's Kyle saying, oh, you weren't being a good friend to me. I prefer you to defer.
Exactly. Deference in that group is clearly the preferred. Both deference and stand up for me if I'm being blasted, show your loyalty, deference and loyalty. I wanted to ask you, I was kind of thinking about Bose coming in and sort of this fast and kind of bonded dynamic between the two of them. What's your take on that?
I feel like, well, actually, I do want to do a whole other episode on this. I feel like this is a whole other episode because I've been so drawn to that relationship from the beginning. Again, I don't think you know this. Initially, people were really into that friendship at first. And so it was another instance where I felt alone on an island because I was watching it just thinking to myself, there's something so strange here to me about this connection. And I remember, I think in one of the first scenes where they bonded, they were literally at the end of the table in their own little corner. And that's what it felt like to me energetically, like this collusion where they have this secret between each other. It just felt like they were using each other in a type of way, but for different reasons. And yes, I think there's so much there. And I do want to make sure we touch on the money before we end. But is there anything you want to say about that quickly? I feel like this is its own huge topic.
Yeah, I understand why that is its own. And I hear that they mutually had something to gain by kind of partnering up there because Dory really needed someone and Bose is new and also wanted an inroad, I would imagine, to establish relationships with people. And it was fascinating because she's such a strong, I really liked her a lot this season. And I also saw something about the way she gains information and wields it, in a way to sort of know what's going on. And Dory was the running tap for giving her a whole bunch of information that I'm sure she found helpful.
Well, it's interesting because I will say I did start dropping in a little bit to Bose towards Dorit because I was just so curious. I was like, what is going on here? And what you just said, one of the first things that came through was an understanding that Dorit's kind of a little bit on an island in the cast. And and I don't even, it's so weird with Beverly Hills. I think I find it kind of boring usually. So I don't retain details as well as I do with other franchises. So I don't quite remember where Dorit was at the beginning of the season with everyone, but it was this feeling of she's a little bit on an island and there's an entry point here. And what I was so aware of in the first half of the season was I was drawn to Bose, and shout out, I actually found out that I went to college with her and totally we didn't know each other. This feels so Lisa Barlow, Heather Gay coded. We didn't know each other. No, we genuinely didn't know each other. I'm sure she has no idea who I am or what my name is. But the second my good friend Liz said to me, she said, we went to college with Bose. And then suddenly I just remembered seeing her on, 'cause she's such a presence, right? And it's so weird because I literally never once met her, spoke to her. I couldn't tell you her name. I knew nothing about her. But the second Liz said that, I suddenly remembered seeing her on campus. Anyways, so shout out to Bose, where we were in the same class. We graduated together. But very drawn to her personality, drawn to her life force, drawn to her power, all of that, but also taking in, she is so outspoken and she is such a force to be reckoned with. And yet she's like coming in sideways through Dorit. Like she's fighting Dorit's battle. And the whole first half of the season, I just kept having this question of, I wonder what it would look like for Bose to be in direct conflict with the other women, not conflict by proxy through Dorit. And there's something about that I'm very drawn to for her. Like I get this. It's so interesting because she is such a force to be reckoned with. And yet the way that I've experienced her with the ensemble on the show is like circling around the perimeter and coming through the side door somehow. So I don't know. I mean, if we ever go deeper, I'd be kind of interested to explore that.
Yeah, I would love to kind of go into that with you because I feel it and sense it a little different, I think, because I really felt her kind of being a champion for women in a way. And so I think there was a need to sort of, this is an established group. It's on television. There's so many probably elements around what are my inroads here? Obviously, new people do not always do well on these shows. And I would imagine Dorit's kind of a force. So like I said, it felt like a dual. Go ahead.
No, when you said Dorit's a force, because I was going to say before, I said, I feel like they were using each other. Maybe for part of it for Bose was like seeing Dorit as an inroad. And I was going to say, and I didn't say it yet though, but Dorit's using of Bose to me felt so much more like when you just said a force, like it felt so much more territorial. It felt so much deeper. It felt so much more vampiric. And it almost is like another form of this passive aggressive, like it's mine, meaning Bose. Like she's mine. This is my territory. You guys don't get this. Although, to be honest, I feel like that's kind of what Kyle has done with this Morgan Wade character as well. But it's this kind of like passive aggressive territorialism of like, oh, I mean, I don't even know what this would mean in terms of literal translation, but the voice I'm hearing is like, oh, you guys are going to fuck with me? Oh, you guys aren't going to take me seriously? Oh, you guys are going to do X, Y, and Z to me? Well, I get my own little corner of the world over here with my new ally, with our secrets, and no one else gets a part of this. Even as I'm saying it, I can feel the delicious pleasure of it. It's like devouring and it is ownership. And I haven't quite gotten to this. Like I can feel there's something more specific I could really get to the bullseye of, but there's something here just around like, this is mine. You don't get a part of this. I'm proving something here. Like now you see me, now you don't. This is part of my power play.
Exactly. But I think the word that really landed for me is devouring. And I think that's always been the case with Dorit in terms of her energy, in terms of her conversation, in terms of her need. It's like that. Even in absence, I'm taking up so much space by showing up late. There is something about that taking. And I think that goes back to what you were saying, right? Like that sort of right to have it all.
It's almost like in the place where there is this ferocity and this fire and this life force, because it's been compartmentalized, it almost comes through in the devouring grip. You know what I mean? It gets funneled into, the passive aggressive power play, the clenched fists that won't let go. And it's almost like if she could just let that go, then all this life force and fire and heat would move through her in a much more modulated, direct way. But yeah, I do wonder about the money stuff. I mean, I guess I'll just say for you, because again, I know you're very not tapped into the gossip side of things. But yeah, no, there's been rumors for years about the financial house of cards and them like really pretending to have more money than they really have. I mean, it's actually played out on the show, and I think it's going to continue to play out on the show more. But rumors that PK staged the home invasion for the insurance money. Like there's just stuff that follows them.
Oh, I did not know that.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And it's going to play a big part, I think, on the reunion. But, lawsuits, stuff like that. There's been a lot of question marks around their financials. And it's so interesting to me because one, Dorit is smart. So she's smart. So I'm always kind of sitting there like, well, especially, or even like with Jen Shaw, I always have this question of like, what stops people from just going out and earning an honest, decent living and living within their means? But one of the things that I was so drawn to was that moment. Oh, and this is another example of a huge blind spot, double standard with Dorit, where there was that kind of quote unquote joke of, well, if Sutton buys me this brand of a purse, I'll forgive her. And it was presented as a joke. And to me, it did not feel like a joke at all.
Uh-huh.
And I say this is emblematic of another blind spot because on these after shows they do on the Peacock platform, recently Dorit was talking about how she was questioning the validity of Garcelle and Sutton's friendship. And she was saying they didn't even like each other. And it wasn't until Sutton went to one of Garcelle's charities and made a large donation that they became friends. And so Dorit was basically saying Sutton bought Garcelle's friendship. And she was saying it in a very judgmental, self-righteous way. And meanwhile, I'm sitting here, Dorit, do you remember when you said your forgiveness could be bought with a designer purse? So it's just another example. She is a queen of projection. She is literally, and I don't usually use that word very much because I think it can be really reductive, but she is someone who I literally see over and over, literally accuse other people of doing things that she is guilty of. But anyways, I want to come back to that because I really felt it was true. I felt like there was a part of her that really would have accepted the purse. And even in that, I could feel something. Again, it's just that feeling of like, I want what I want when I want it. I'm owed things. Like I felt like Dorit feels owed that purse from Sutton. And it brought me back again to this possibility of like, it just the flavor of it to me felt like a girl who gets adorned with things. There, Dorit, we're putting you in pretty things. We're buying you things. And again, it's sort of like, okay, well, this kind of pisses me off, but it's like, if I'm going to get silenced, I want the fucking handbag. Like, this is what you promised me. This is the deal. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm sort of just saying different things because it all feels like a part of the tapestry of something to do with her relationship with money and her entitlement and the impulse to take and this question mark of the validity of their finances. And the last thing I'll say again, because I'm sure you don't know, there's actually even been like a recent controversy where I won't get into details, but basically her stylist came forward saying, you were cheating me out of my money. And he provided receipts and then like he posted the text messages and you could see, I mean, it was a convoluted situation that I'm not going to get into, but you could kind of see that Dorit did do something here and you could see her kind of greasing the wheels and finding excuses to not pay him. And then when she was called out for it, finding a way to make him the bad guy. Like there is this sort of there's this grifter aspect to her of like, I'm going to take what I can get. And I don't care. And if you try to call me out on it, no fucking like deny, deflection. It's your fault. And it's like, that's where I get concerned about her because sometimes she feels dark to me, like really dark, like kind of, I'm not saying she's actually doing criminal stuff, but it has that flavor of like criminal dark. Like she'll fucking screw you over and not give a shit and she'll walk away. And then if you say, Dorit, you just stabbed me in the back. She's like, oh, no. You fell into my knife. What are you talking about? You're the one who tried to stab me. It's really, and like, actually, it's connecting me back to that devouring energy with Bose. Like, there's something in her that really feels like, I don't want to fucking mess with that.
Mm. Yeah, I'm listening and I'm taking you in and I feel the flavor of it. And I feel that place that you're identifying as you owe me and I am owed and I will take what I'm owed. And I think I definitely catch the darker element of it. And I don't actually, I don't know why I don't go to the criminal with her. Like the same way I might with Jen Shaw, where I remember exploring Jen Shaw with you, and I could feel the place with Jen Shaw where it was like, if they're stupid enough, then that's on them. Like that, it's not my fault that I landed all this money that I did. It's their fault that they handed it to me. And I don't feel that with Dorit in the same way that I did with Jen Shaw. And I think what I feel with Dorit is more like, I will, yeah, I will take this like purse. If this is what you think will write this, I'm going to take it, but I'm still never going to forgive you. Or I still like, I'll take it with that idea that this is the forgiveness. This is a hypothetical, like sort of, what do you want to call it? Like a metaphor, but I'll take the money, but it's not really going to buy me. And that's the dark part, like I'm going to make you think that we're clean and clear. And I get that because you owe it to me, but trust me, you don't have me.
Yeah, well, I mean, this sort of harkens back to what we were saying earlier. It's the idea, again, if we're right about this, if we're onto anything, if this reflects pattern, it's like, okay, yeah, I'll wear the dress. I'll take the attention. I'll take the compliments of being the pretty pageant girl because that's what I can get. And by the way, if that's what the deal is, I'm owed it. This is the least you can give me. And also, I'm fucking pissed about this. So I don't really forget. That's the thing. And maybe this is why she can never let stuff go. It's like, I'm taking it because I deserve it and you owe it to me. And this is the setup. And also I'm pissed about it and I don't really forgive you for it. So you better go get me more.
Yes.
Because it's never ending.
Right. And the question was, what is it going to take? Like, and how maddening that was for her to get called out. Like, really, what is it going to take here to have this be wiped clean, both with Sutton and Dorit? I think they're very similar in that way too, which I think is part of their deeper conflict.
But what's interesting about Sutton, and I bet this could be its a whole other episode, is that I do feel like she's got a clean relationship to money. Meaning, I feel like Sutton pays her bills. I feel like she's financially clear. I mean, even just what happened with her divorce, where I don't know if you remember, but she talked about how her husband tried to hide assets. And Sutton she borrowed money from rich friends. She hired a grade A legal team, did amazing forensics. And now we see her like Sutton. She's one of the few housewives I respect as kind of an entrepreneur. It seems like she's actually creating something that really has like a bit of her soul in it, and that she's so proud of this store and the clothing line. I just feel there's something in Sutton, and obviously she wielded it in a very cruel way this season, but she feels very direct, clean, clear, and upfront in her relationship with money, at least as compared to Dorit. Whereas Dorit feels, and maybe this is part of the power play, it's like Dorit's kind of circling around money, from the sides, kind of grabbing at it. And, I sort of brought in this question before of like, what is it that stops some of these people from just going out there and earning an honest living and living within their means and getting into clean, clear, direct relationship with money? And maybe it is like an equivalent of running late. I'm not doing this on your terms. I'm not waiting to save up to be able to buy the Chanel. I want it now and I want it on my terms and I want to given to me. And yeah, for me to, hypothetically show up to a job and to work my way up and to put one step in front of the other, it almost feels like the equivalent of showing up on time. It's playing by someone else's rules. I want what I want when I want it because I'm owed it. Mm-hmm. It just feels like there's a house of cards. I mean, I'm not saying anything new. Everyone talks about this, but PK and Dorit, it just like, even when I visualize their big farmhouse, it just like house of cards, house of cards, house of cards. It just feels like there's no foundation there and it could just topple over at any moment. It's like robbing Paul to pay Peter.
Uh-huh. Yeah. But the vision is strong. You know what I mean? Even if it's opaque, it's a strong vision. It's like she puts it out there. It's not like a vague projection. It's a very, very clear image that she is putting out there, and underneath it, the substance isn't. That's where it feels like there's not a lot there. You know what I mean? You know how some people can kind of really think they're putting something out there and it feels like, oh, it's so, it's so diffuse. I can't actually see it. Hers is, there are specific brands. There's a car, there's a cigarette, there's a kid, like she's got the whole thing. It's strong, but underneath it, it's like, wait, what's actually supporting this? Where is this actually sustainable? And maybe that's a big sort of insecurity in her that gets poked at all the time in these relationships with these other women that have something in a different way.
Yeah, I think my takeaway from this little exploration with Dorit in terms of possibly understanding her more deeply is that idea of, the fire breather who's not getting taken seriously.
Uh-huh.
And everything that comes with that.
And to be honest, sometimes it does feel like a lot of hot air. That even though there is fire in there, there's a way that it lands only, like really heated air, which is interesting.
Until the season where I feel like we got like bursts of the real. And again, I think that's what people were responding to because it is exciting and it's alive. You know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, Dorit's online, but again, kind of a wild fire hose rather than, an intentional flame.
Yeah, I'd love to know what she actually wants.
And also, just to clarify, I think this was clear in what I was saying. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't see her as like a criminal in the Jen Shah way at all. I don't see her running scams. But yeah, I was speaking, to what we say, like the flavor of an energy.
Yeah.
And I do want to say, even though, no, do I see her like going out and scamming elderly people with false business school leads? No, I don't see her doing that. But do I see her like doing what she's allegedly doing with this makeup artist? Yeah. Like little cheats, little games with money, running out on debts.
Yes. But coming from a place where it's like, yes, I see her doing that, but I see her believing it's justified. Like she's not making it up. She's like, they didn't earn their keep. I'm not paying them for the thing that they didn't promise. Or, even if the person spent all the time and they didn't deliver in the way that she expected them to in the agreement, that somehow the agreement was vague enough to where she still is entitled to owe and she will hold it back and make it the person's fault for not delivering as opposed to her fault for not making the agreement very clear. So that is the place that I do see what you're saying. Like I'll be vague out here in terms of expectation and the contract of what I'm paying for. And then when it comes to paying, hey, no, you didn't meet my expectation and I'm not paying you, even though the person gave all their time and did what they thought they were supposed to be doing. Something like that.
Yeah, this brings me back around at the beginning. So maybe it's a perfect place for us to conclude. But, when I hear you say that, I feel like it just speaks to the huge blind spot. And I think that's what I'm so drawn to, because even though I brought in the blind spot initially, Dorit's really interesting because she is sharp. She's smart. She's quick with her feet. Quick with her words. Very put together. And so even in this exploration, I can forget, oh, wait, there's this huge fucking blind spot where she does not see herself. And she literally points fingers at other people and accuses them of the very thing that she's doing. And maybe that could be its own episode there. I'm just so curious about that blind spot. And maybe this does speak to the notion that there was some sort of deeper level of a lack of safety or trauma, like in youth, that she's covering. And maybe the blind spot is representative of like the deep compartmentalization. But it's just like there's a huge blind spot in her. And I think that's what makes her a little... I don't know what to say. I don't know what the right language is. I just know I would be very... I'd keep her at an arm's length, like in real life. Like I know for me, I would feel a need to protect myself. Like that blind spot just feels like a lot can happen there. Kind of like what you're saying. Like I can get really vague and then justify things and then run out on the bill. It just feels like a lot can happen in that blind spot.
Yeah, it's like the way I might be with someone like her is I just see a chest of drawers, and there is one that is locked, and that compartment holds like a lot of fire. And anytime we're circling or getting anywhere near that, I know to keep wide berth, something where I don't
Mm.
trust. I trust that I know that this one has a secret pocket, that she's not clear what exists there. But boy, if someone gets anywhere near that, the content starts coming out as protection. So that's kind of the way I sense it.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we already said this, but it does contextualize from a place of possible pattern, like this home invasion, even more of just this like flare up of this like traumatizing, shocking event that, like, to use your imagery, jumped out of the drawer, and then suddenly she's sitting there navigating, oh shit, I got real feelings, and again, I just sort of see everything as metaphor. And I just really saw that as, it feels like Dorit's coming back more into her body. And it feels like there's this idea of like trauma that needs to be processed. And then to your point, it feels like it did become like a catalyst for all these deeper questions about how she set up her life and what's going on with her marriage. It's interesting. The last thing I'll say is, I just released last week this solo episode about Kyle and her journey right now, because I really see her attempting to dismantle her life in really deep ways that in some ways, I really feel for her and I respect what she's doing. But at the same time, I also see her coming up against just all her old games and her past. It's like she's half in, half out. And it's almost like I see Dorit doing that too in her own way. I see them both as women who are attempting to really dismantle something. It's almost like an ego death. They're really stripping something down, but it's like they're also still spinning those old wheels of the old survival tactics. It's like they're not fully letting go yet. So it's just interesting. It's an interesting mirror.
Yeah, it's like that little pocket of whatever they're circling is actually maybe the very thing that got left intact, but there needs to be like from a shamanistic point of view, right? Like the hole that needs to be filled in with something, and I think they see it as danger as opposed to, oh, there's something there for me that if I actually take it and own it and bring it back towards myself, that it will actually fill in something here, as opposed to kind of keeping it shoved out as if there's danger.
Power of the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything. The shadow, it's a cliche for a reason, but maybe that's the note I'll end on. If there's one thing I can leave listeners with, it's just the thing you don't want to go towards is the thing you need to go towards. The thing you don't want to go towards is your deepest liberation. It's your deepest freedom. So if you're listening to this, just let yourself sit with whatever it is you don't want to go towards, because I'm not saying you have to do it right now. You can get ready, but just know, ultimately, I think if you want a fully integrated, embodied life, you're going to have to go towards that. And I also think the byline to that headline is, it's never, ultimately, I think in the long run, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be.
Exactly. Open the drawer. Like what you left it's stayed intact, but you have more available to you now. When you open it, it can become treasure. So yeah, I agree.
All right, Piper, it was so fun having you back. I've missed this. I love doing this with you. It's been so long. It's been over a year.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Well, because I never know now. I know I guess sometimes you drift away from the shows, and so I never know what you're actually watching. But when I catch wind that you've been hooked, I'm gonna corral you.
Yeah, when I've had a weekend where I'm bored and I do a binge, yes, I will fill you in.
Thank you for being here. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed this. As always, you can find me on Instagram, Jamie Stein, JAMIESTEIN, where I have exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. And yeah, if you're listening to this and feeling any type of way about perhaps going towards things that you have resisted and wanting to find the treasure and perhaps understanding where your native life force perhaps got shut down in ways that didn't feel good and you're interested in opening it back up, I have intensives that do just that. So I'll put a link to the little application you can fill out in the show notes. You can send that my way. And as always, I love hearing from you guys. So feel free to message me, DM me with your own hits, observations, and insights. And I will see you on the flip side.